hear the whistle scream. Dying is not a choice.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2025 horror film Whistle. The film is directed by Corin Hardy and it stars Daphne Keane, Sophie Nalise, Sky Yang, Percy Hines-White, Michelle Fairley and Nick Frost. Okay, the film follows a group of high school students who happen to stumble across a cursed object. Daphne Keene's character, Chris, is new to school. She unfortunately gets given the locker of a previous student who spontaneously combusted, as you do. And when she opens her new locker, she discovers that there is like this ancient whistle in there from the kid that had it before, who spontaneously combusted. They kind of want to experiment with it because they learn fairly quickly through their teacher that it could be some kind of object that is cursed, and if you blow the whistle it will bring about your death. So as teenagers do, what do? They tempt fate. They blow the whistle and they all get marked then by death, and death is coming for them all. However, it's coming in a slightly different way, as, for example, if you are going to die in a fire, 60 years old, then 60-year-old you is going to turn up on fire to spontaneously combust you. If you die in a car crash at 32, then 32-year-old you is basically going to come and get you and make you crash in a car, even if you're not in a car, so on and so forth, sort of thing. And so they've got to kind of work together to try and figure out what this cursed object is and how they can stop their own deaths. Right. What are my thoughts on Whistle? Well, this one hasn't really been massively on my radar, mainly because I've seen some pretty unfavourable reviews of this one. However, I thought, it's a cinema release horror. It is probably worth giving it a go. So therefore, I have given it a go. Now, there is a lot wrong with this film. Let me just say that straight away. But that doesn't mean it isn't without some merit, because it has got some decent stuff in here as well. You know what I mean? It's from the director of The Nun. It's got a decent cast. Even if it is incredibly generic in many, many ways. This is a film that likes to dip its toes into the good old-fashioned horror tropes. There's loads of cheap jump scares in it. That kind of stuff. There's logic things that don't make sense. If a child at school had, died in a horrific way, or died in any way, they would just not assign a locker to the next person that comes in without clearing out the locker. So it's logical things like that just don't make sense to me, It's a film that makes up its own rules. There is an understanding that if you blow this whistle, it's you that gets targeted by your own death. However, we also learn that if this whistle decides to randomly do this really loud whistle, anybody who's present is marked for their own death, is going to be killed by their own death. So you just kind of like, hang on a minute. To me, that just seemed like a really cheap and quick way to mark everybody for death, rather than thinking of ways to get them all to blow the whistle. Because at the end of the day, who's going to blow a whistle if their friend has just died the night before in a horrific way after blowing a whistle. I mean, you wouldn't go near one with a bloody barge pole, would you? And there's no getting away from it. This film is heavily inspired by Final Destination. It is undeniable, and it gets properly Final Destination by the end, with some of the ways they decide they're going to try and beat it. You just kind of think, well, they're going to get bloody sued here by the makers of Final Destination if they carry on like this. It was really like they completely and utterly ran out of ideas and have to really finish the film and finish it effectively. So they just finished it in this really naff way that didn't really make a great deal of sense. And they've got this odd character in this film as well. Oh God, what was he called? I think he was Noah, something like that. And he was like the local religious kid, teenager, who was, you know, a very church-going person, but he was also the local drug dealer. And I'm not kidding there. And initially I thought he was just being ironic or sarcastic when, you know, he was being all religious and stuff and pretending to be all religious. No, but no, he absolutely is. He is this religious person, deeply religious person, who also is a piece of shit, who sells drugs to kids. And I just couldn't get my head round who would write a character like that and try and make it make sense. So there's some really dumb stuff in this film. No getting away from it. But there's also some really quite effective moments here. Most of the death scenes are very good indeed, and quite graphic at times. Some of them are a little bit, but there are some that you get, and you're just like, wow, that would not be a pleasant way to go. And it does genuinely have some unnerving moments here and there. So there was potential here for this. I just think it would have been wiser for them just to have a little bit better writing, better story, because it felt rushed at times. Didn't really feel like they had a proper ending here. And it gave you one of those really naff horror endings that you used to get like 20 years ago that you just make you roll your eyes, you know, right at the end. But I've seen a lot worse, I'm not going to lie. Is this one that I could strongly recommend? No. But as horror films go, it is very generic. You know, it's got the usual teenager type things, teenage stereotypes. It copies off other films, but it also has its moments. Put it this way, even though I rolled my eyes a few times watching this, I was never really particularly bored at the same time, and surely that has to be some kind of success. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Whistle. To be honest, not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, but certainly not a classic horror film either at the same time. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this review. I'll be back with more content on the channel very soon.